it is around this time of year, generally, where my full attention goes right to conference tournaments, the conference championships, and I mean all of them. So whether you're looking at the Ohio Valley or Big Sky, chances are I'm kind of looking that way because there is so much basketball, and we're actually going to get a bubble March Madness, if you want to call it that. But it's remarkable that they've been able to do what they have done. I'm not going to be overly picky, just like I wasn't with college football when people were like, "Do you think that's the top four?" I mean, I the way they're doing the playoffs, and I'm like, I can't believe there was football. So the fact that they even played, so I wasn't necessarily throwing myself off the ledge because Texas A&M didn't get in the top four. I was just amazed that they even played the game because it was nice just sometimes to watch football. Basketball will be, and it's so different when you take out the pep squad, when you take out the stage band that plays during the games, when you take out the whether it's a smaller field house where there's like 10,000 people, but the kids are jumping up and down. That's March Madness, right? I mean, that is the craziness, but there's still an energy to college basketball that is still my favorite thing. Watching those young kids go out there and just throw themselves literally in front of trains to try to win, it still is a great time of the year. What is interesting now is if you go through team by team and see how many Canadians are on those programs, and they're not just on the team anymore. They're not going for the jacket. A lot of times they're the best players they got on the court. And this has not, and it's not new. For a lot of people, it's like, wow, when did this happen? Well, for more, we go to a guy who actually knows, because he's known most of these guys who've, since they were teenagers. I mean, if I look at Jamal Murray, for Jason Thom, who joins us here, good morning, by the way, good morning here in the snowy area that you're from.
Starting to melt, getting sunny out. Birds are chirping.
Jamal Murray, you've known him since how old? How old was he?
I guess 16 is when I knew Jamal Murray first time. I know the brothers at North Bowl Hoops, 15, 14. Yep.
And now that was, considering where he came from, if you watch a college basketball broadcast, they are constantly dropping, well, here's a kid from, and they'll usually destroy the name, but they'll say Ontario.
I was just about to say that.
Yeah, exactly. Ontario, Canada, or whatever it is. But it is just part of the. If your program south of the border isn't aware of Canadian players, you'd probably look sideways and go, "What do you seriously? You don't recruit or have any idea what's north of that border?" That would be. In fact, I would think that probably isn't a situation. I don't care if you're talking about Southern Utah. I think they would know.
Yeah, it's actually a lot of the conversations that we have is, when we talk to college coaches, because we run the North Pole Hoops scouting service as well, and where we're, providing evaluations on players like a Jamal Murray when he was 15, and a lot of these guys, especially now during COVID, they just can't get up and, and see the players themselves. So they're relying on any evaluations that we have on them. And a lot of the times it's us educating them on exactly what you just said, because there's a couple of different ways. Either, hey, yeah, there's Canadian that kicked our butt the other night. Like, is there more of them up there? Then there's the, wow, like Shea Gilgeous-Alexander dropped almost 40 points the other day, and another Canadian hit a game-winning shot. Like, you guys are doing it at all levels. And then there's other ones that think, we want to recruit Canada so that we can get Jamal Murray. And this is, ABC University in the middle of nowhere, and they're trying to swing above their weight and get a recruit that is a Jamal Murray. And what we have to try to explain to them is the strength of our Canadian players. These guys that you're talking about are outstanding. They were blue chip prospects when they came out. But I think for Canadian basketball players, the strength that we're seeing now is kind of the 15 through 80 guys, like out of a top 100. Like, we have Canadian players that go so under recruited up here that, currently aren't a blue chip prospect, but have that ability to work their way up to that level, like a Luguentz Dort, who did go to Arizona and was obviously a top level coming out of high school, but when it came to the NBA, went undrafted. And then now is probably, he is the best value contract in the entire NBA on what he's making and what he is doing. He's one of the, I believe I saw a stat the other day that he's top 5 in the NBA for percentage of guarding the best opposing player on the team. Of course, they have stats for everything now, but he's guarding James Harden. He's guarding LeBron James. And then as we saw the other night, hit a game-winning 3. And this is a guy who I talked to his high school coach actually 2 nights ago, his former high school coach. And I told him, I go, do you remember the story you told me about Luguentz Dort after losing a semifinal, scoring 40 points? And the story he told me about what this kid was about is that he stayed back and cleaned up the locker room after the game himself. Team of 12 players. He scored 40, lost, and cleaned up the locker room afterwards.
Yeah.
Like those are the type of people coming out of Canada, and that's the education that I'm trying to give to these coaches. So it's like, listen, coach, you may not get a guy who's going to score 35 points a game, but he's going to be a culture builder on your program, and that's what we try to educate and explain to them on. And by the end of the conversation, they're 100% in.
It's pretty cool when you're scanning different websites, and I always check out North Pole Hoop Scouting on Twitter because they provide daily updates on what happened the night before. And Nathaniel Jack from Mississauga is just another example of it yesterday for the Seminoles. What can you tell us more about him? And when you're looking at a guy like this in a Florida State team that isn't that bad, I believe they're like 9th or 10th, somewhere around there, ranked in the nation. What kind of damage do you think a Florida State team can do when it comes to March Madness and a guy like Jack, who's a big contributor to this team?
First out, I want to shout out one of the new bucks on the squad, Josh Milliken, who's taken over that MPH scouting account, who is putting in that. And again, we can't do it without our guys like that who want to be involved and do that sort of stuff. And he just scans every night and provides that stuff. So really quick, want to do that. Second off, I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago in talking about the tournament. When you're talking about teams like that, those are the type of programs that you have to do digging in on them to kind of understand the background, the biographical background of the different players in those programs and what they've faced during this COVID time. As I think that is going to carry a lot of weight heading into the tournament. Of course, you're going to have your top 4 teams and everything along those lines. But it's what those guys face during these COVID times and what the programs have faced when it comes to scheduling, rescheduling, all those different things that come along. Because we were talking to Michigan State not too long ago, and they have to make up something like 6 games over the next 3.5 weeks or something silly like that. And that's just for them to possibly make the tournament. And I think that's what you have to do is kind of look back at their program and their scheduling. How many games did they have rescheduled? How many games did they have canceled? Where did those end up getting put back? How many of those kids, like if you can find stories on them, that how many of those kids had family members who faced COVID? How many of did this touch them directly? Because I'll be honest with you, man, like I think when it comes down to it, those intangible kind of things are actually going to play in more this year when it comes to winning at the highest level than any year before. Because, as Mike said, like this isn't going to be a regular tournament, right? So the same sort of things that come into it, like the fans, all the things that affect the game. This year, it's different things affecting the game. So it's kind of doing that type of background research in my mind for people, again, who like to make games more interesting. That would be the mindset that I would have going into it, and seeing what type of guys, there's lots of research done on people overcoming adversity and what that does to them in a sporting realm. I mean, this year, if there's any time to put more weight into that, it would be now.
This is that year. This is the year where you look at the intangible and we know what it is. So there are schools, for instance, it's remarkable. Michigan, I think they went at least a couple of weeks and didn't play a game. They went a couple of weeks. Gonzaga went through even a period of time.
Wow.
But they have massive rosters. But then you have schools, for instance, and we were just talking about this actually this morning about Michigan State, where because of what they have missed, because of the makeup of what they've had, this is probably one of the poor performing Michigan State teams that Thom Izzo's had in almost memory. But here's the thing about Michigan State and Thom Izzo. Well, guess what team has played really well now collectively in the last 7 days? They play Ohio State, and if I'm Ohio State, I can be real careful. I mean, they just lost to a Michigan team that is really, really good.
Yes.
But they better be careful. Like, you want to have the bounce back, but Michigan State because they know they basically, when it comes to the conference tournament, they're going to have to literally run the board if they want any chance at all. I still don't think they're going to get in, but they're going to play that way. So they become very dangerous. So you look at all these schools, some of them have underperformed. I would think if you look at a school like Tennessee, they thought this was going to be like a really big year for them. Well, there's a lot in that category that thought they were going to have something, and it's just kind of fallen flat. They're okay; they'd be in the top 25, but they're not dangerous. I take a team, for instance, like Iowa with Big Luka on that team, but they do struggle a little bit. I think Michigan will probably take them out to the woodshed today. It's just one of those years where you're like, who is playing how when? Except the only exception is that Gonzaga is so good. I don't know what it would take for them literally to not win, aside from the weirdness of COVID tests, which is, I guess, always a possibility. I just don't see Gonzaga not winning this national championship.
And the other thing you have to look at is the depth, like you'd mentioned on that program. And it's not about how deep, obviously, they can play, but it's like the depth of that roster and competition level during practice. That's the other thing you have to look at as well, is like who's pushing who during the practice leading up to these games. So, there's a lot of different variables that, again, in a regular year you wouldn't put in. But yeah, that Michigan team. And again, when we talk about intangible type stuff, also the head coach, like Juwan Howard, has really absolutely peaked at the right time.
He could be coach of the year for me. Like he
absolutely.
Really could be.
Yeah. And we don't know what he's doing behind the scenes, but it's obvious like that what he has went through in all the different levels and NBA and everything else that he has done, that he's prepared for something like this more than some other programs. There's some other programs that are just absolutely falling off the edge of the world right now. And I think a lot of it has to do with, their coaches are going through it, man, just like the players and just like the rest of us. Right. And some people just handle it better than others.
Jason, 2 minutes left. What else are we missing on the basketball front that you are top of mind right now that we haven't really talked about?
Raptors 905, baby.
Hey, baby.
Raptors 905. I'm telling you, man, from a program, and I call it program, I know because I talk a lot of college ball, but from the Raptors trickle down to the 905, like I've watched this team, this 905 team that had Malachi Flynn to start off the season, and they were all over the place. And man, head coach Patrick Mutombo really is cut from the same cloth as Masai Ujiri. And from the first media availability, he's talking about selflessness and, servant leadership and all this stuff. And I'm kind of going, man, like I've watched a lot of G League games, and it's going to be tough to kind of sell this to guys who have agents in their ears saying, you got to take 15 shots a game tonight. You know what I mean? Like, how is this going to work? And man, it's come together the last couple of days. It's crazy. On North Pole Hoops, I did a little kind of evaluation midway through the bubble kind of season, and Henry Ellenson didn't rip him, but was kind of like, man, like, this guy's going to see his G League career come to an end. I don't know where he's going to go. This guy turned this around the last 2.5 games. He's one of the best players in the G League right now. And he's a 6'10 stretch 4-5 guy, who just, I think it's because I'm hurt by the Andrea Bargnani years. That anytime I see a 6'10, 7-foot guy just shooting threes and not rebounding, it's just driving me insane. And not rebounding is in this guy gets a double-double just walking on the court, right? But just doesn't battle. And man, this guy has helped turn this team around. Last night they were without 3 rotation players, and they went out and beat a 7-1 team by 35. And again, like, would never have thought that was a possibility. And I would love to know the numbers heading into that game, what it looked like. But very, very cool what's going on with the 905 right now. It's very exciting, seeing opportunities, seeing the guys step up. And seeing like Courtney Charles is now, one of the tops in the organization there when it comes to, front office. And he was with the Raptors before, and he's down there. And again, they as a traveling crew are undermanned, and Courtney Charles is cleaning up the bench at halftime, like, picking up papers and stuff like that. And I'm sitting there, I'm looking and I'm going, and I'm the type of guy who in the NPA, like I'm out there sweeping the floors, in the wintertime to make sure the salt's not on the floor so these kids don't hurt themselves. And then I see at the highest level them doing the same thing. And I'm just wondering now, like, how is that trickling down to everybody else involved in that? And then I go back to the Raptors from the top down. This is what's happening. And I think that to me is what's exciting about basketball right now in Toronto, the Toronto Raptors, but I think it's now kind of happening across Canada that people are seeing that. And if that can become, especially in the day and times we're in right now, if that can become what basketball becomes in Canada, then when I'm talking to these college coaches about Canadian basketball, it's you know what I mean? I have proof at every level about what we're about. And that's what's pretty exciting to me.
That is.
It is all very exciting. I think, as I said, for Mississauga, and right now, obviously, crowds, you can't go to the games, but the quality of basketball that's played in their backyard. Hopefully, when you're able to go back into the facility, go back to the Paramount, hopefully they do, because the basketball you're seeing in your backyard literally is it. Well, of course, it is pro, but you're seeing guys that are NBA caliber or will be going on to the show, and they're playing for almost. I mean, what I don't know what a ticket is to a Raptors 905 game. It would be.
Right. You can get there in parking for $25
Yeah.
to like $20. Like it's the best thing. And we had the O'Shea Brissett revenge game. Mississauga native came back against the 905, put up 28 points, dunked it on Henry Ellenson, screamed out loud. It was the last loss the 905 had, but I was sitting there going, man, this is fun to watch. He had that game circled, and it's a great. If you love basketball, I mean, you're gonna sit down at a G League game and enjoy what you see. It's awesome.
Absolutely. Hey, Jay, thanks so much for this morning. Have yourself a great weekend, and we will talk to you again next week.
Thanks, guys. Looking forward to it.